Good afternoon and welcome to Chris 180's award-winning Lunchtime Live series. I'm Chandra Luckett, Chief Marketing Officer here at Chris 180, and we are thankful you decided to spend your lunchtime with us today. Believe it or not, a year ago, we weren't really wearing masks. Maybe some of us were. Lines at the grocery store were wrapped around the corner, and kids had just started to do school from home. But did any of us actually know what was ahead for the next 12 months? Our worlds have completely changed, and while things are slowly getting back to a so-called normal, there is a long way to go. That's where Chris 180 comes in. For those we serve, this time has been devastating and truly difficult to navigate. But how did we as an organization change courses to remain viable and still have an impact across Metro Atlanta? Today's panelists are two of the organization's leaders behind many of those decisions. Joining us today are Kathy Colbenson, the President and CEO, and Cindy Simpson, our Chief Operating Officer. Thank you both for being here today. And to our audience, please remember that you can always drop questions in the comments below on Facebook or Instagram, and we will answer those live throughout this conversation. We're going to start today posing a question to both of our panelists. And it really hits hard to the point of nonprofits who have sometimes not fared a great fate during this pandemic. I would like for both of you all to answer this question around how did Chris 180 remain viable and fair throughout this entire pandemic? Kathy?
Well, as Chandra said, we did not know what to expect with this pandemic. And what we did was look at our assets, what we had already in terms of being prepared. Fortunately, we had moved into a new building, which allowed us more space. And we had already been providing telehealth psychiatric services. So in some ways, we had a little bit of a head start. But I will say that without the foundation community who really stepped up, without individual donors who really stepped up, Chris 180 could not have risen to the occasion and provided the extent of the telecounseling and the other services that we provided. We truly were completely dependent on the charitable support that we got because we did not know whether our contracts were going to pay. We didn't know what telehealth approvals would be given, and we were facing tons of unknowns, just like everyone else. We were also worried about resources for our clients, for the people in the community we served, and for the children in our homes in foster care, because we needed toilet paper like everyone else.
I think the other piece with that is that not only not knowing, but the other people that stepped up, our staff stepped up. I mean, it was very interesting to watch. You know, they had their own stresses going on, their own problems at home that they were dealing with. They had their own children. And you have all of a sudden learning on Zoom for kids. And that was difficult. But at the same time, our staff stepped up and said, okay, where are the gaps? What do we need to do? And let's get ourselves together and keep moving on. And that's really what we did. The other thing is the state agencies and other of our partners stepped up, and we collaborated to deal with what the issues were for our clients.
So my next question for you both is, counseling is the core of the services we provide to thousands of people at a number of locations around the metro area. When did you all know we had to make a shift to telehealth?
Well, we knew almost immediately we had to make a shift to telehealth. And I have to say, what Cindy said is exactly true. We were in like a war room for 2 weeks trying to figure it out. All the leaders of all of our programs. And I'm just couldn't be more proud of the team that we have here at Chris 180 who stepped up and who made tough decisions and prioritized making sure that we could serve the community. And what we were all experiencing was actually a shared collective trauma. Everyone, individuals, our clients, the staff in the organization were experiencing a trauma. And this is something that we'll be addressing for a long, long time. We were also very fortunate that the federal government waived some restrictive rules around telehealth. The state waived some restrictive rules around telehealth. And so we were able to provide counseling, which we didn't know we were going to be able to do in the way that we did it originally.
I think the other piece of that is that even though rules were loosened for us and everybody else, is then how do you make that switch? How do you get therapists to understand how to do telehealth? And you got an electronic health record that you have to change everything in. And so it did take us 2 weeks of a team working on things over and over. And then we had to train our therapists on how to do telehealth. I think the other thing with counseling is that we knew that kids were in Zoom all day for school, and how are they going to take, being virtual for therapy as well? So that was hard. So even during the counseling time, it was also that we remained open in some ways. So our drop-in center, our at-promise centers, our cure violence centers, our community work, we actually had staff voluntarily saying, no, I'm not going to quit seeing my families. We're going to go out there and do that.
They provided wraparound services to families in lawn chairs in the driveways. Our therapists made play therapy kits that they delivered to our some of the clients who desperately needed it. And we had volunteers who stepped up and provided supplies and therapy supplies and other things. That it was truly a collaborative, all hands on deck effort.
It was. The volunteers delivering art supplies, it was great. And children's books.
Mm-hmm.
So those
awesome
were
children's books.
Right. So it was really good to see.
So let's move on to one of the things that really shifted us as an organization, providing more than 3 million meals to thousands of families across Metro Atlanta, and well checks that checked on the well-being of people. Cindy, how in the world did we get into that distribution lifestyle for a little while?
It was kind of an accident. So it was, what Chris 180 is known as is where's the gap and how do we fill it, or how do we partner with somebody, or how do we help another partner fill that gap? And it really happened because on the west side, there was an immediate need for food. And at the At Promise Center was already giving food out on a regular basis. So it just grew. And then what we decided was, well, we can't just do this on the west side. The need is in DeKalb County. The need is in Zone 3 and Zone 6. So we have a food pantry here in Zone 6. And we said, okay, let's start delivering food to DeKalb, and let's start delivering food in Zone 6. And because of our programs in Zone 3, we had to serve them too. The interesting thing was that we had a lot of donations of food. We had some volunteers that helped. And for the first few months, really March through June, our staff stepped up again. And every Tuesday and Friday, you'd see 10 staff at each of the 3 delivery sites. And they were actually delivering food and doing well checks. Then we got a partner. So CARE, International Care Organization, began to partner with us. And we were able to actually hire residents in those zones to help us bag the food and deliver the food. And we trained them how to do well checks, which is an important piece. So a delivery would be that you have somebody who's delivering the food, go knock on the door, step back. They all had masks on, and we were able to then see the resident, talk to the resident, and see how things were going on. And I think the biggest incident that sticks out was we delivered food over in a zone that is a 19-year-old with a small child. I think the child was really somewhere between 2 and 4. And you could tell something's wrong. And she whispered to the food delivery and well check person, "Can you call me back at 5:30?" We called her back and finding out that this is a domestic violence case. And within 2 hours, we had her out of the home and into a hotel, and she's now in her own apartment with her child and is actually employed. So is really doing well.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Chris 180's food delivery unique is the well checks. Because we've seen incidences of domestic violence, people losing their temper and hitting each other. We've seen increase in suicidal ideation. So the well checks have enabled us to connect people to other resources or counseling that is helping them make it through the pandemic.
I think the other piece of that, Kath, is that we train people, residents who deliver, on how to do well checks, but what we also train them in is trauma. So you're really looking at training residents who are having their own trauma to also be trauma informed. And that was a good realization for them and their families, but also then they're helping their community, which was a plus for them too.
And it's something that's critical in trauma recovery is being able to do something tangible that makes a difference. And so we were helping everybody on every level, which is very exciting.
We have a question, actually. Grace on Facebook asked, are there any services that Chris 180 temporarily shifted to that may become permanent, like telehealth or food distribution?
I don't think food distribution is going to become permanent. Our goal right now is to continue our delivery through August, because hopefully all kids will be back in school at that point, which will help. And there'll be more jobs and employment coming back. So that's not a goal. Telehealth, it's going to be dependent on what the state of Georgia and the federal government says on what we can bill for telehealth. I think telehealth will last a couple more years and then go back a little bit. But they're going to reduce it to some extent.
Yeah, that's entirely dependent on regulations. What we've seen is a tremendous benefit through telehealth. We've done grief and loss support groups that we've offered to the community. And the combination of, because we did have some therapists throughout the pandemic who came into the office to see clients who felt like they needed to be seen in person. So a combination of telehealth and in-person visits are what we would like to see going forward into the future, but it all depends upon regulations from the state of Georgia and from the federal government.
Right. We also are at a point where a lot of clients are ready to come back face to face. Maybe not every week, but at least like once a month to see their therapist face to face. So we're moving more and more that direction as well.
And I think everybody can relate to that, because I know there was a time I just got excited when I saw a live person. And recently I got to have a breakfast meeting. That was exciting. So I think our clients are just like us.
So let's shift to another area. During the middle of the pandemic, another crisis reared its head: racism and the murders of Black men and women around the country, including Rayshard Brooks here in Atlanta, Ahmaud Arbery in coastal Georgia. How did Chris 180 respond to the social unrest both inside the organization and in the communities we serve?
Well, Chris 180 has always taken stands for equal justice. And so we marched with our partner Mercy Care, actually, and we advocated for the hate crimes bill, and we created conversations, a series of Zoom conversations for our staff, because we were all impacted. And we wanted to hear from the people who work for us and the people who are serving our clients, and give them the opportunity to talk about their pain and their anguish and their anger, and to figure out how we could support our staff, who then can support our clients. So for us, it was very important to talk about it, to acknowledge it, to name it, because as a trauma-informed organization, acknowledging and naming what's happening is the first step toward being able to heal and recover. And so we were really committed to having tough conversations, providing support and listening, and figuring out how we could not only help our staff, but also help our clients. And Cindy's going to talk about some of the work that we were doing in the community.
And we were doing this, we were just starting to do it before this all came up as well. But if people remember back at the Wendy's when there was a lot of commotion over there and a lot of unrest. And because we were doing cure violence in that zone at that time, our team were at Wendy's 24/7 for about 5 days in a row. And they were instrumental in keeping things calm. And that's their role. That's what cure violence does. So when an incident happens, they go to where the incident occurs, and they work with the police officers, keeping both sides of the fence here as calm as possible. I think the other piece with that is that what we saw and what we did more of within Cure Violence team is we did a lot more healing circles. So we had a lot more residents coming to healing circles to give them an opportunity to speak as well. So they got an opportunity to share their feelings and actually go to looking at solutions. The other thing that Cure Violence did is a lot more trauma response network training. So residents that are getting trauma response network training, they're actually going to when those incidents happen as well. And their role is to help keep things calm and to talk and have conversations.
I know. I think that is critical. The other piece that we had started in January was a spiritual health and wellness program. And we have people who are being certified to be chaplains in Northside Hospital and Northside Gwinnett. We also had interns that were supposed to work in the hospitals who could not work in the hospitals because of COVID. And we positioned 4 interns in our programs in the Drop-In Center and at Promise, in the Westside Empowerment Center, and other places within the organization. And they worked with the kids and the staff in having vigils and having discussion groups, because the pandemic and the racial and social injustice stirred up within people questions about, where's God in this? I mean, where's a just, fair God? And so the spiritual, or if you're not a person of faith, just how do we make this right in the world? And so the interns provided an invaluable role in being able to help not only the clients, but our staff who were struggling.
They were really good. I think that one other piece that we had started this, we had talked about it before, but a group of young adults and our staff worked together to start the call to action group. And we've actually had 5 different meetings with the Atlanta Police Department. And those have been really exciting, where you've got the police and residents and young adults just sitting down and having a conversation and realizing that, hey, wait, police are human. They're people too, and they have their own trauma going on. And how do we work together and find a solution?
One of those call to actions meetings, we also invited the community, and there was even a couple of families who came and engaged with the police and the young adults to talk about how we move forward together.
So I'm going to throw a question that we didn't talk about ahead of time. What has been a story of a person or a family or a young adult that we have served during this time period that has stuck with either one of you?
You go first.
So we have a young man a homeless young man. And I think through this pandemic, and because of our relationship with CARE, who helped support us, we were able to get him employed. And also he was going to high school. He was finishing high school. He was a little bit behind, but the exciting news was in May, he graduated from high school and is the first one in his family to graduate. And he still lives here over at Summit Trail, still works, and now is interested in going to college.
You can't beat that.
No.
And there are countless stories that we could tell, but I know we've only got 10 minutes, so.
Thank you for that. So next question to think about, ladies, is what do you believe will be the lasting impact of the pandemic on Chris 180 and the clients and people we serve and our own teams?
I think that there's going to be a long-term effect related to trauma, related to the children who have not been able to, especially teenagers, who missed the proms, who missed important milestones in their lives. And the most important thing to a teenager, any parent knows, is the other teenagers in their life. And COVID has really interfered with that. The other population of children that we expect to be really impacted long-term are your very young children. And if you think about the developmental needs of children at different stages, COVID interrupted that for so many. And, it's going to take, and I do want to say, those of us in the community who are well-resourced, who were able to maintain our jobs, who were able to keep our steady income stream going, we're going to recover more quickly. They talk about a K recovery, so that's that top end of the K. Well, people who were struggling already, who were living on the edge, who were in low wage jobs, who lost those jobs, are going to take much, much longer to recover. And what I am concerned about and what I am hopeful of is that as we get back to our regular lives, we don't forget about those among us who are just as worthy as anyone else, who are going to need continued support, who are going to need continued help. Because it's going to be a long road to recovery. And so you've got your social emotional issues, you've got your learning gap that we expect to be widened. And we're very concerned about that and the mental health needs that are not going to be just swept away when we get back to some kind of normal way of being. Cindy, do you want to add to that?
I think, we hear all the time about our education that kids are behind now a year or 2 years. Well, that's true. There's social development, which we haven't really been addressing, which has got to be addressed. I am concerned about their mental health and behavioral health needs, that we have got to increase the amount of funding that we put in schools to talk about trauma and to work with the kids. That's the only way we're going to catch them up. Another thing I think we should think about is the trauma response network. We do that with residents. Well, maybe we need to teach high school students and college students how to be a trauma response network as well. Because we know, as Kathy pointed out, kids listen to kids. And if we can teach our high school students how to respond to trauma, then they're going to help other students and they're going to help their siblings as well. So it's an indirect way to look at that generational trauma as well.
It's a 360 approach that Chris 180 is committed to help create change.
So second to last question here at the 5-minute mark of our conversation. As we mark this 1-year anniversary of the pandemic, what's next for Chris 180? Any exclusives you want to share?
Any secrets? Is that what you're talking about?
Whatever you'd like to call it.
Right.
Well, we can't really share secrets, but what we can say is that we are committed to filling gaps in services. And we are looking right now at what we think the needs are going to be going forward. And we've just talked a little bit about them, but our world and the U.S. is going through not only the pandemic, but social unrest. We've had hate crimes, the Asian community. We just had another shooting. So there is more than enough trauma to go around that needs to be addressed. And Chris 180 is really committed to providing the scope of services that's needed to get to the root causes to help people move forward in their lives and to heal, as Cindy said, and to use non-traditional means like helping residents and helping kids in high school learn how to help each other.
Right. I think that, you know, helping each other and teaching residents how to do that. The thing I'm going to take most from the pandemic is our team, our Chris 180 staff, how everybody has stepped up and worked really hard and really held it together and kept it going and added things and said, okay, we've got to do more in those communities. And so I think our community work will actually grow from this.
And I will add that in order for it to grow, we really need the help of the foundation community and the larger community, because part of the work that we're talking about doesn't have a funding stream attached. But I'll just say it is super critical if we're going to come together and help each other heal and recover and thrive once again.
Speaking of healing, let's talk a little bit about the vaccine. Chris 180 is intimately involved in making sure that we do our part to help stop the spread and to make our community safer. And I may have heard something about us partnering with someone to give vaccines out. Maybe that's somewhere in the picture for us.
Cindy's going to talk about that.
So our partner is Mercy Care, and they actually called us to talk about actually using our space. And they come once a week on Tuesdays. And right now we're averaging about 120 vaccines every Tuesday. So that's been exciting. We've had over 450 people vaccinated. We're going to keep that going. So Mercy Care they are fantastic. Let me just tell you. They are amazing. We have a email thing that you email your name and date of birth and phone number to, and then Mercy Care calls you and sets up the appointment schedule. The other option that we're also thinking about adding is sometimes it's really hard for people in certain areas to get to a place to get a vaccine. They don't have transportation to get there. So we're looking at partnering with CORE to do 3 mobile units. And then our staff would help get residents in those communities to come and get a vaccine.
So it's really important. We also offer COVID testing on Monday mornings. So we are doing the best job we can do. And that's one thing I think Chris 180 does really well. We've got a terrific staff, a terrific team that thinks out of the box, and we've got terrific partners. And so we leverage our partners, and our partners leverage us. So we're honored to be able to be in the space that we're in right now.
So our closing question I'll pose to both of you. What is the one lesson you have learned individually this past year? Cindy, you start.
The one lesson I've learned. I've learned a lot of lessons. I will say for me personally is what I've had to learn is to really work on being patient, because I'm not the most patient person in the world. The other thing I've learned again is when the chips are down, when things are tough, it's amazing how many people step up. And I hope we take that with us in the future, even when there's not a pandemic, because that's the way we are as people here. And it's been really encouraging to see.
Yeah, I totally agree. Patience is not my strong suit either. The other thing I have really paid attention to during the pandemic is, I call it giving people grace. None of us know what another person is dealing with. We don't know what's going on in their family. We don't know the loss they may have suffered. We don't know what their past trauma was that might be triggered by something. And so it's really important and that's what's hit me really hard during this pandemic, for me to check myself and to take a breath and think, gosh, I don't know what's going on in that person's life, and maybe I need to give just a little bit more understanding. And I think that's something that this world could use a lot of these days, is a little bit more understanding and grace that they give, that we all give to each other.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy and Cindy, for being a part of today's conversation. We appreciate you both sharing your insight and your knowledge as we talk about what the next year will look like, what the next few months will look like. But as we have done for the past 40 years, as we celebrate our 40th anniversary here at Chris 180, we are continuing to respond to the needs of our community, whether that be during a pandemic or anything else that may impact us. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need someone to talk to about the past year, about the trauma that you have faced as we've lived through this collective trauma period of a pandemic. We also continue to need community support. All the information you need is found on our website at chris180.org. That's chris180.org. You can find the link on our Facebook or YouTube or Instagram pages as you continue to connect with us. We invite you back here next month as we continue our conversation series. We appreciate you sticking with us for 12 months as we have presented this Lunchtime Live series. We hope that you have enjoyed it as much as we have. We'll see you back here next month.